everyone. Today, I am so glad you've been able to join us for this live stream. This is going to be a really important one. I am Gretchen of Parents and Kids Media, and we've been doing these videos as part of our PK Cares series on our website. Our web address is parentsandkids.com, and that's associated with the traditional print magazine that everyone knows so well. During this time of COVID-19, we've been looking for experts and professionals to help give parents local guidance on what to do with their family issues during this time. Today, as part of the PK Care series, we have Kathy Sheffield, and she's a school nurse and the lower school counselor at Jackson Academy. And she's got a Bachelor of Science degree in nursing and a master's in school counseling. Welcome, Kathy. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, she is going to talk about something that's really important right now. It's about social and emotional learning. And to start off, Kathy, you've given us a video that we'd like to run that kind of gives an overview of this subject. And we're going to come back with questions on that.
That sounds great.
We're about to run it. And viewers in the audience, if you have questions for Kathy today, you can use the comments form below and submit them live. And then we can ask them of her during this interview and make sure we cover the topics you want to hear about. So let's run the video.
Hi, my K4 friends. This is Mrs. Sheffield. How are you this week? Are you working hard on your schoolwork and doing what your parents say? Look what I got this weekend. A new kitten. Can you see her? Oh, she is crazy. She crawls everywhere and she meows. Oh, she left her mom and her brothers and her sisters to come live at Miss Sheffield's house so I could have a kitten at my house. I've been wanting one, and we got her this weekend, and she's been crying a little bit. And when I was trying to figure out what was wrong with her, I had fed her and I made her a great little house. I decided she might be scared. She's living in a new house without her mom and dad and brothers and sisters. And so I thought today we would talk a little bit about being scared. That's another feeling, right? We've talked about mad and sad, and last week we talked about happy, a good feeling. Do you think it's okay for my little kitten to be scared? I think so. I'd be a little bit scared living in a new house with new people. She has a nice bed and we feed her all the time, but it would still be a little bit scary. So I found one of my very favorite books about being scared. Have you ever read this book? There's a monster at the end of this book. It's my favorite one, starring lovable, furry, old Grover. So let's see what it says. The Monster at the End of This Book by John Stone. What did that say? On the first page, what did that say? Did that say there will be a monster at the end of this book? It did. Oh, I'm so scared of monsters. Oh, is there anything you're afraid of? Shh, listen, I have an idea. If you do not turn any pages, we'll never get to the end of this book. And this is good because there's a monster at the end of this book. So please don't turn the page. Grover sounds like he's a little bit afraid of monsters, doesn't he? You turn the page! Sometimes when we get scared, we holler at people because we're really scared, right? Maybe you do not understand. You see, turning pages will bring us to the end of this book, and there's a monster at the end of this book, but this will stop you from turning pages. See, I'm tying the pages together so you cannot... You turned another page! Good Grover hollering. You do not know what you're doing to me. Now stop turning pages. Can we tell that Grover's scared? His eyes are big and he's hollering and his hands are up. He's really afraid of monsters. There. I, Grover, am nailing this page to the next one so that you will not be able to turn it And we will not get any closer to the monster at the end of this book. Look at him. He's hammering the pages shut so I can't turn the page. All right, all right, all right. Do you know that every time you turn another page, you not only get us closer to the monster at the end of this book, but you make a terrible mess. Oh, can you see Grover? He's really so scared. This will stop you from turning pages. A heavy, thick, solid, strong brick wall. I would just like to see you try to turn this page. That's making him feel better, isn't it? He's making a wall so he can't turn the page, so he can't get to the monster. Ooh. Do you know that you're very strong? I was able to turn that page even with a brick wall. The next page is the end of this book, and there's a monster at the end of this book. Oh, I'm so scared. Can you look at Grover's face? How do we know he's scared? His eyes, his mouth, he's kind of holding his hands. Do you see that? And it looks like he's sweating, or he might be crying because he's scared. Please, please, please do not turn the page. Should we turn it? Well, look at that. This is the end of the book. And the only one here is me, Grover, the lovable, furry old Grover. I am the monster at the end of this book. And you were so scared. I told you and told you there was nothing to be afraid of. The end. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. You know, sometimes we're afraid of things that we don't need to be afraid of. Miss Sheffield's a little bit afraid of squirrels. I know they won't hurt me, but they just scare me a little bit. And you might be afraid of things that aren't really scary. Maybe you've seen something in your room before and you thought it was a monster. But you know what? It's okay to be scared. Maybe it'd be great to tell a grown-up, you know, I thought I saw something in my room, or I'm scared of storms. Maybe last night we had a lot of wind and rain. It's okay to be scared and to go tell mom or dad that you're scared. And then sometimes there are things that can help us when we're scared. To be with a friend, to be with mom and dad. I have a blanket that I really like when I'm scared. Sometimes a prayer and talking to God makes you feel better. I like to picture God's hand right here, and I'm standing right inside of it when I'm scared. And that makes me feel better because nothing can get me when God's holding me in his hand, right? So think about that this week. It's okay to feel scared, and there's a lot of scary stuff going on right now. The coronavirus can be scary, or the weather can be scary, or math problems can be scary. But it's okay to be scared. Let somebody know. You know, when it's like carrying a heavy box, it's easier if two people carry it. Well, sometimes when we're afraid, it's easier when two people know that we're afraid. A mom can help us, or a dad can help us, or a brother or sister, and that makes being afraid not as bad. So think about that this week. I love you and I miss you so much. Air hug my K4 friends and squeeze. I love you and I'll see you soon. Bye.
That was an awesome video. Thank you, Kathy, for providing that to us. Now, I want to remind our audience, if you have questions of Kathy, who is a school counselor and a nurse, you can make those in the comment space below and we'll address them while we're on the air. So while people are thinking of their questions, Kathy, tell us a little bit about that video and why it was created and what it intends to accomplish.
Okay. Since we weren't able to be in school, I thought it would be helpful to do these videos. I normally would have met with the children once a week in their classroom, but since we couldn't do that, I made these videos. We would send a link to the parents where the children could watch them. And we talked about emotions that they might be dealing with while they were at home. The video that you saw was about being afraid. And I think a lot of the children did experience that. Their world was different, and they were afraid of some things that were going on. So we usually talk about it, and then we read a story, give them some tips to deal with it, and then next week I'd cover another topic.
Oh, these are just great. Now, I know you're at Jackson Academy, and these links are sent out to the JA students. What about people in our audience who may not be part of the JA family? Are these videos searchable, say, on YouTube?
They are. They all are found on YouTube. They either start with K4 or K5, and then once you click on that, it'll say Jackson Academy Lower School Counseling. And we covered several different emotions, and that they'd be able to find those videos on YouTube.
Oh, that is great. What a wonderful public service. Now, to address our topic, we're talking today about social and emotional learning. First, explain to me what that is, and then I'm going to ask you to talk about why Jackson Academy believes that's so important, which of course I
Oh,
agree
good.
with. So help me with that. What is social and emotional learning for our viewers?
All right. Social emotional learning is a process that children and adults go through where they learn how to acknowledge their emotions and manage them. We do that at Jackson Academy by learning to set goals, to work on relationships. We talk a lot about choices and consequences. Also, learning how to build relationships, how to be a friend, and those types of things. And
Now,
Jackson Academy has made that part of our mission statement that we don't want just a good academic foundation. We want students that live a life of purpose and significance, that they're active in their communities, and we think that social and emotional learning is very important with that.
um, I do have a question about this. We think a lot of these skills, maybe we're thinking these come natural to children. Um, some kids just have a sparkling, optimistic personality and others don't. So you're telling me that social and emotional learning can take place where kids can acquire this knowledge and
Right.
impart these things in their life. Talk about that a little bit. It is something that can be taught.
I do think it's something that can be taught. You're right. Some children just naturally have that gift of able to make a friendship, to acknowledge what they're feeling, but we're seeing that more and more of them don't. And so we do think it's important to teach it. I don't know how old you are, but I'm over 50 years old. And when as a child, I remember a lot of times adults would tell me I wasn't feeling something. If you got hurt playing, they'd say, "Oh, you're not hurt." But I was hurt. Or if you had a goldfish die and you were sad, your parents would say, "Don't be silly. It was a goldfish." And those types of responses that we got that didn't really address emotions, we tamped them down. Well, now we're seeing a generation of people my age that have childhood and emotional neglect. It's it's kind of a problem that we never learned to address our emotions, to name them and to deal with them. Uh, our parents weren't abusive, they didn't neglect us, but they often didn't recognize an emotion or didn't encourage us to recognize that emotion. And so I think that's one of the reasons it really needs to be taught so children learn at a young age to address those emotions and deal with those.
So learning to address the emotion, maybe acknowledge what it is and give it a name and all of that, that's a precursor or a first step towards learning to manage your emotions. Is that correct?
Yes, I think that's a good step to. A lot of children don't even understand what they are feeling. They can't put a name to it. So we do a lot of that teaching ahead of time so that they do know what those emotions are so that when they get into a particular situation, they can to deal. I'd like to start with, I start with 4 year olds, and that's what we do. We discuss a topic, we read a book like on the video that you just saw, and we talk about it's okay to be mad or to be sad or to be scared. Those are all normal emotions. And then the things that we deal with is how to manage those. If I get mad, I can't go kick my little sister. That's not appropriate. It's okay to be mad, but we learn to do how to deal with that, and that's something that we feel is important. I tell the children we're learning to fill our toolbox with tools that we'll use when these situations come up, and that seems to be effective so far.
If you don't mind, give me a couple of examples of how you would work on, anger or fear or something with these really young kids. I'm just very curious. It sounds fascinating.
That's a good question. A lot of times, the first thing we'll do is find a good teachable moment. If your child is laying on the floor in Walmart throwing a tantrum, I see moms all the time try to reason with them. That child is in a position where they can't be reasoned with. They can't think all, they've really just shut down or had a meltdown. And so we really encourage good teachable moments. When you're in the car with your kids, say, we're going to walk into Walmart. We're not going to buy candy this trip, but maybe if you earn money or an allowance, we could buy something at the next trip. If you prepare them ahead of time, that seems to really help cut down on these meltdowns. And you're reasoning with them when their mind is open and available for these conversations. So that would be my first tip. My second one kind of leads into that is to role play. A lot of times with your children, you'd say, if you were to get mad today, can you tell me what you would do? Let's say someone took your bike and you role play so that when these situations actually do happen, the children have the tools to manage this. And that's been really effective. And that role play can change as the kids get older. You know, in middle school, you might ask your child, what would happen if you were offered a cigarette today? How would you handle that? Or if you were offered alcohol? Role play so these kids can develop what their responses would be before they get into those situations and don't know how to respond.
Oh, Kathy, that is just brilliant, and I love those are very concrete examples.
I think the last one I would add would be to model good behavior. As parents, when we get mad and we get sad, our children are watching. Do we throw things? Do we break things? Do we say things we shouldn't? And that's also teaching these children social and emotional management of their behavior, and they're watching what we do.
That is a really good point. Now, I know you've been doing all these videos during this time of COVID-19 when everything's different at school. Talk a little bit about COVID-19 and children's emotions. I was thinking earlier, a lot of kids have had some real loss. They're losing summer camps. They've missed birthdays. Um, they're not going to be maybe not be able to take their vacation to Disney World. There's some, I mean, for a kid, those are some pretty major losses. So, talk a little bit about this time in a child's life while this is so uncertain. And even us adults, we're kind of befuddled too.
That's true. That's such a great question because we're seeing that a lot with children. Oftentimes, the parents are so engrossed in how COVID's affecting them, maybe loss of job or different working arrangements. Sometimes we're not paying attention to what the children are going through. So I have a couple things I'd recommend. Number one, be very open with your children. You might need to explain to them what a virus is. The more facts they have, that really combats their fear. Tell them what a virus is. That's why we're wearing a mask. That's why we're washing hands. Uh, Depending on the child's age, you'd want to be age appropriate, but it's often give them statistics. The research in China shows that less than 1% of children tested positive for the virus. So if you set out 100 Cheerios on your coffee table and you picked up one, that would be a visual illustration to the children that very few children are getting this. But we do want to be really proactive in staying healthy. Uh, I think when we use facts with them, that helps dispel some of that fear. The second thing I would recommend is to really ask your children how they're feeling. The example you gave, are you mad? We're not being able to go on vacation. We can't see grandparents. We're not going to school with our friends. Are you sad? Are you lonely? Really encourage your kids to tell you how they're feeling because then you can move from there. We're sad about this, but hey, maybe we could FaceTime the grandparents. We're mad about missing vacation, but maybe we could do a staycation and do fun things at home. I would really encourage the parents to talk to their kids about that. And then the third thing that's really important is to watch for signs in your children that these emotions are going deeper than you think they should. And they may need counseling. They may be profoundly sad or profoundly mad. And it's really more than the parent can handle or address. And it may require some counseling. We're seeing that in children now.
And I know in our previous live streams we've done over this COVID season, we've highlighted a bunch of resources on where to find counseling. And in Mississippi, it's available in many, many ways, in many different formats. They're doing live streaming and Zoom counseling, and there's lots of places with sliding scale. So I think
Exactly.
getting parents to ask and be assertive and try to find out what they can get for their kid would be real important right now.
Right. At Jackson Academy, my information is on our website. So I know our parents have reached out to me. Calling your pediatrician and seeing who they would recommend that you see is always a good resource for you. So you're right. We do have a lot of great resources available. You just have to ask, you have to reach out.
Right. Um, Now I want to switch subjects a little bit right now because I've been real impressed with JA's response to COVID-19. Tell me, what's going on now and going on into the fall, just to give us a preview of what y'all are all doing.
Well, that's still early. We haven't made a lot of decisions yet. We just opened our after school care program yesterday. All the staff is wearing masks. We're doing temperature checks. I think we have a really good program in place. Athletics is starting this week. The coaches have been trained on COVID regulations and the things that we're able to do. And we're still working on meeting in groups to decide what to do in the fall. We're hoping we'll all be back in the classroom.
I bet you miss your kids.
I do. This is a difficult job to do when you're not around your children. So I do miss seeing them.
Now, have you been able to just engage with them on like Zoom meetings from time to time?
I have. I've been able to Zoom the teachers. Were meeting with them on classrooms, so I was able to see some of them that way. I've had different parents contact me, and I just FaceTime with their child that's having a particularly hard time. But it was sure nice to see kids on campus yesterday. It was very nice to see them again.
Oh, I bet. I bet. A campus, even in the summer when things are quiet, a quiet campus just isn't a good thing. You
It's
want it to
not.
be
It's
full
such
of,
a sad place.
yeah, they need to be full of laughing kids in the halls and all that.
Right. That's right.
Um, Next, is there any specific thing you might recommend for parents over the course of the summer?
Keep your kids active. We really recommend being outside as much as you can. Um, Talking to your children a lot. This is such a great opportunity to spend time that you may not have had before. So many parents are working at home. We've talked to kids about learning to cook, staying next to your mom when she's or dad when they're making dinner, learn crafts, things that we might have been too busy before to do. I love dinners at the dinner table with your children. Our lives have gotten so busy that a lot of times that didn't happen. And now that we're all at home together, I'm hoping those types of situations are gonna occur more frequently.
I must say, in my neighborhood, I see more family groups out walking their dogs and biking and just walking and pulling kids in the wagon. I did not know how many kids there were in our neighborhood before COVID-19 because they were all so busy. And now they're
Exactly.
in their yards and on their porch.
Oh, that makes me so happy. That's how we it is here in our neighborhood too. It's nice to see them doing things as a family and being outside.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to touch up base on a couple of things. Could you review the points from the two graphics? Review the points from what parents can do to teach their children.
Really work on finding good teachable moments. That's the
Mhm.
first one. Really work on role playing, and you can do that with all ages. It's so nice to have these conversations before things come up. And then the last one is the one that steps on some parents' toes, but really try to model good emotional behavior.
That makes perfectly good sense, and I know we're all guilty sometimes of losing it or whatever.
Exactly.
I've for years I did not want to have a specialty license plate because I was afraid my driving might not be representative of the organization.
Oh, that's good.
So it's like, okay, so I understand you have to live up to what you say you believe in.
Exactly.
Now, let's talk again about the other graphic. How can we apply these things to children?
Using the facts to combat fear. There's different trains of thought on that one. Um, some people say you should admit to your child that you're also a little bit afraid. Maybe your child gets up in the middle of the night from a bad thunderstorm and you're trying to console them. And you're telling them it's okay to be afraid. Storms are scary. Some scientists really think that the parents should say, I'm afraid of storms too, if you are. Other scientists think the child responds better if the parent is there safe. You don't have to admit that you're afraid because they really need for you to be the brave one. So you really have to know your child and your child's personality to which response you would give. Um, and that's a parent's call of how they'd want to handle that.
Hmm. I heard someone talking about that same topic who would say to their small child, I used to be afraid of X when I was little, but as I've gotten older and grown up and gotten bigger, it doesn't bother me so much now. And now I'm not afraid of it. So that sort of gives the child the concept that, yeah, I'm afraid now, but I won't always be in this place.
Right. I think that's a great response. And a lot of times, if the kids can't tell you what they're afraid of or what their emotion is, I really encourage giving them crayons or colored pencils and see if they can draw something for you. A
Mhm,
big, black, scary rain cloud, they might can draw where they might not be able to verbalize that.
mhm,
Um, there's a great emoji chart that shows, 10 or 12 emotions, and you can ask them just to put their finger on the face that kind of reflects what they're feeling. And sometimes that's helpful for parents to have that chart on the refrigerator and say, you really seem to be struggling today. You're having a bad day. Can you point to one of the faces that kind of represents how you're feeling today? And a lot of times children can. That's a good way for them to express themselves.
Oh, I love that idea. And I think you could also say, Mommy's right here today.
I was thinking that. Yeah, I'm feeling this way and I need a little time out for a few minutes. I think that's a good response.
That's a really good idea. I like that. Especially, you know, kids, I remember we being in the preschool and you would tell the children, use your words.
Exactly.
They don't have the vocabulary and the knowledge to piece all these things together. So
Right. They
I
can't use the words if they don't know the words.
yeah,
So
I
that's
love
what we're
the
trying to
idea.
teach
That chart's brilliant.
them. Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to tell parents that we've not gone over? I realize I could probably quiz you for hours.
Um, I really would like to just commend them for what they've done. I know the parents at our school have seen a whole new side of distance learning, lots of time spent with the students that they weren't before, and they've done a great job. They've learned a lot about their students, and I just want to give them the opportunity to pat themselves on the back. We made it. We made it through the school year. They used skills they may not have thought they had, and to take the summer off, do fun things, and enjoy time with your children. And then hopefully your teachers will be back to start school in the fall.
Well, that'll be our prayer too, and I totally second that. Let's go out and have a fun summer. Um,
Exactly.
you still read to your kids and you still do things with them and scavenger hunts and nature walks, but make it all about the fun.
Right.
I think families went through a ringer very suddenly without much prep, and I totally agree. Summer should be a time off and for fun, so that we look forward to going back to learning in the fall.
I agree.
Well, Kathy, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Um, and when you go back to JA and see the halls full of laughing and learning kids, I just hope it's a blessing to you.
It will be. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed talking to you today.
Well, you were great. And audience members, do know that you can share this link with friends who need to have this information. I would highly recommend that. You've given some great concrete tips, and we want them to go far and wide. Thank you, Kathy.
Great. Thank you.